Welcome back to We Married the Family, the place for all your in-law issues, questions, and explorations as a daughter-in-law and as a couple. Today's episode is different because rather than talking about something, I'll also be illustrating it. This is something that's really important to understand before you get married, at the beginning of your marriage, and all the other points too, whether you're a few months in or decades in. I feel this is the place where a lot of problems originate, and a lot of problems can be resolved. And this will apply to those from South Asian and other collectivist cultures and give you an understanding of how you can move forward in your marriage. Traditionally, within the South Asian culture, we hold values of family, unity, group harmony, selflessness, and we can really struggle to carve out not only our own identity, but also our identity as a couple. So let me show you what I mean. Imagine firstly from the male perspective that this is your household. And within your household, you have your parents and maybe a few siblings and yourself. This is your family unit. And as a family unit, you have shared experiences throughout childhood and into adulthood. You have shared values and narratives, shared beliefs. This forms your family culture. It's how you all operate and uphold the family system. For example, we all eat dinner together. We don't talk back to elders. We don't share our feelings outside the home. We hide our true feelings if they will upset others. So this is him, and he gets married. So in comes his wife, the daughter-in-law of the house. This woman comes into this family, into something that is a new environment for her, a new family culture, because she would have her own family system that she's come from. These are her parents, and maybe she has one sibling. So she's moved from here and joined this family unit. Now, obviously, this is very normal in our culture. This woman makes adjustments during her transition, but several things happen here where people already start getting stuck and caught in tricky situations. What's quite typical in a Western society like the UK or the States is that the husband and his wife create a separate unit outside both of these families straight away. And this is what we call a nuclear family. And the nuclear family that is newly formed through this marriage is seen as the primary unit, and the husband's family and the wife's family become secondary. Even if we're brought up in the West, this isn't the way that we operate culturally. The family units that we have are extended family units. And when two people get married, the husband's family, now the wife's in-laws, remain as the primary unit. So even within this is where we can see some issues around the daughter-in-law and her own family relations, where she might struggle to have the autonomy and agency in seeing her own parents and siblings, or having them visit her, or even keep in contact via phone, because so much emphasis is given to the in-laws. And this is something that needs rebalancing and addressing, because in no way is the wife's family any less important than the in-laws. But coming back to the married couple in this family system, there's an expectation that they continue living in the same way the family were living before the wife entered, an expectation to maintain the family culture. And this is where you face another struggle. Because now if the husband or the wife were to deviate from that and start doing things differently, that can create discomfort and tension within the original system and within the relationships. And this is where you get people scapegoating the daughter-in-law, because now that she's here and possible changes are needing to happen, she's the one apparently causing it. She's breaking the family apart. She's pulling the son away, without realizing that it is natural and necessary for a system to shift when a new person enters. And this happens not just in families, but also in workplaces and in peer groups. What I want to focus on is how this new couple create and maintain their new couple identity within the family. How do they, as a new unit, separate themselves from the previous and already established family culture, especially whilst living under the same roof? Now, separation doesn't mean rejection or abandonment or cutting anyone off. Separation is just a way to say that you are creating a distinction between one unit and another. Just like each individual in a couple needs to have their own sense of who they are whilst being in relationship, so does the couple relationship need to have its own sense of what it is within the wider family unit. When I talk about the couple being able to create their own couple identity, there's a process within that where both of these people are learning about each other. They're finding their way around who each of them is, what are their likes and dislikes. Who are they emotionally and intellectually and spiritually, whilst also being in this environment with other people? And that can be a really challenging process, and it takes time. One of the issues that comes up here is that the husband expects that his wife will come into the family and will adjust to his family culture. She'll create her life within his family unit, that she'll do what's needed for this family unit to continue to function in the way that it always has. But she's not joining as a sibling or a daughter, she's joining as a wife. And that unit needs to look different. In a simple way, that means creating a couple identity, your own unit that consists just of you two. Nobody else from the husband's family should be within that. Having physical, emotional, and energetic boundaries that define you as a separate unit to the rest of the family is really important. You are still part of the family, and you're separate from it. It's not about rejecting or attacking the family. It's about both of you being able to define for yourselves what your marriage looks like, to know what is important to each other in the marriage, to care for your relationship so that it lasts. It is harder to do this when you're living in an already established family unit. It's hard for the husband because any change that is created is going to have an impact on other people. But this doesn't have to be a difficult, hostile, or negative process. The husband, the wife, and the family will inform how things go forward. If people are rigid, closed off, disrespectful, and unwilling to adapt, then that's where the problems arise. For example, the wife might want to make a change where rather than eating together as a family every evening, she might want to go out as a couple once a week. But someone in the system might push back on that. Or if the wife is dictating to the husband that he has to stop spending so much time with his siblings, then that's also going to create bigger difficulties. It's important to discuss as a couple how you will address and make the changes that you need. You really have to allow yourselves and each other to do things differently, to change and to grow. When people believe that everything should stay the same, that's when you run into challenges. The family thinks they should just be able to carry on as though there isn't another woman in the house now, that the relationships between everybody need to remain the same, that the son's role needs to stay the same. And as a husband, he might still be trying to be the same version of the son to his parents that he was before he got married. And it's just not possible for things to remain the same. That's the whole point of being married too. It's a change, it's a progression, it's the creation of a new family unit. The family system can't possibly stay the same when someone new comes into it. And that's just how systems operate and function. If you're expecting everything to remain the same, what you're doing is being inflexible and the tension starts building. If you expect things to stay the same, you're dismissing and excluding the new person that's come in. Because essentially you're trying to pretend that she's not there. If you include her fully, you'd all be adjusting and doing things that are inclusive. The new person brings with them their own personality, their own views, their own opinions, and that does come into the circle, whether you want it to or not. And in fact, the more you try to ignore this fact, the more strained the system will become over time. What I see happening very often is that when a daughter-in-law comes into the family, she forgoes her needs and wishes to try and fit into the family, to be accepted and be part of the original system. But over time, that catches up with her. She starts to feel angry, resentful, exhausted, and hopeless because she's been neglecting herself, and so have other people. She's let go of herself so that she doesn't disrupt the system. But that has an impact on her internally and within this new unit. Sometimes the family want her to do that because it means they can all carry on business as usual. So in a way, if a daughter-in-law's presence is creating some discomfort, that's a sign that she is showing up authentically and not just appeasing everyone. And it might be a sign as well that somewhere in the system, something isn't flowing with the change. I do want to caveat this because sometimes the daughter-in-law will come in and start causing issues recklessly. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the daughter-in-law who comes in and is joining the family just as herself without ill intent or malice. If the family doesn't adapt, then it can run into problems. The marriage definitely will, because the tension, hurt, anger, all occurs within the coupled relationship. And if the husband isn't ready to receive some truths or to listen to her feelings, then rather than family dynamics shifting, those emotions coming from the wife are now given back to her. And this back and forth of escalating arguments can sometimes be impossible to address, and sadly many couples end up in divorce. The things I've talked about are very much a norm in our culture, but that doesn't mean that they're healthy and should be continued to follow. When creating a couple identity within a family unit, you have to look at what things need to be changed and addressed so that there isn't an ongoing negative impact on the couple's relationship. Because when there is, ultimately it's the relationship that suffers. So this is how you create a more equal system between the two families and create a solid foundation as a couple. This new formation is something that you can come back to and revisit as much as you need to and as often as you need to. These circles don't represent separate housing, by the way. They're just a representation of boundaries between each unit. And as you can see, they're still connected to both family units. And sometimes what will happen is that the husband will move slightly closer to his family. Maybe he's got certain responsibilities and then he comes back. And similar here as well. It will be helpful to you both if you can be patient with each other, be encouraging and supportive, have empathy, and not put pressure on yourselves to move quicker than you're able to. This is the space for you two to keep coming back to each other, to make decisions together, to check in with each other, to share your honest views and feelings in a safe place. And that's going to go a long way towards creating a strong, trusting relationship. You both need to have the freedom to move, but your priority is your couple identity. And neither one of the couple are dictating to each other about what they should do and who they should see and how they should spend their time, but they're listening to each other and responding, working together. And the sustainability of this depends on ongoing conversations between the two of them and between both individuals and their respective families. You both have the responsibility to your couple identity to make sure that you're caring for it and respecting it. And within that space, there needs to be an acknowledgement and respect of each other's wishes regarding family relations. It's not a space where you prevent or push each other to do what you want or what you think should be done, or even what the families think should be done. It's about engaging in ongoing, honest, and considerate conversation about how you both maintain relations whilst keeping each other a priority. And sometimes what can happen is that things from a different circle might start to encroach on your space. Because the system has changed, others might wonder, why are these two gone so quiet? Why are they not doing XYZ anymore? Or however the changes have happened. So going back to this system being able to adapt. This is where the husband might initially need to have more conversations with his family. For example, letting them know that, we're going out for dinner tonight, or we all went to the beach last weekend, so this weekend me and my wife are planning a trip somewhere else, or whatever it is. If the family don't take to it very well, that doesn't mean that you abandon this and return to this, because sometimes that happens. There's a real resistance that comes up from the existing system when there's a change occurring. And that resistance is very normal. Usually when you continue on your path, what eventually happens is that the previous system readjusts and orients itself to the change. You might even see some movement within the system because now there is more space and new formation can be created. And that's not a bad thing. It's just different now because when we change something, we are creating something new. If you've benefited from today's episode, do like, comment, share, and subscribe. If you've been affected by anything discussed in today's episode, you can join my daughter-in-law's membership. The link is in the description, or you can book in for one-to-one or couples therapy with myself or another therapist.